Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So I'm about to make clove and rosemary oil for the third time, and I thought that I'll take you guys through this process and show you everything from scratch to sort of answer some of the questions I've gotten on my previous video of how to make cloves and rosemary oil. So I've been using this oil since August of last year, and if it wasn't working, of course I'll not still be using it 6 months later and even making it for the third time, or maybe this is even the fourth time I'm making it. I've lost count. And the thing is, I have pretty good hair from my days of relaxed hair to my first natural hair journey to now. My hair doesn't need so much to grow, it grows fairly well. My edges, on the other hand, have been bald for a long time. I think from my days of relaxer damage and protective styling, my edges have been suffering. But since I started using the cloves and rosemary oil, my edges have started to grow a lot more rapidly than before. Even more noteworthy is my kids' hair. They were born with little to no hair. I've been struggling with bald spots since they were born. They're almost 3 now, and I thought that it was going to grow over time, but it didn't until I started to use the cloves and rosemary treatment, and I realized that places that were previously bald are beginning to have hair, even if just a little. I'm not here to tell you that this oil will grow your hair like crazy. I mean, I'm not promising that, because like I said about my kids' hair, it's nothing extra, it is nothing crazy, but there is definitely improvements compared to how it was in the past. I know that there's this whole debate of if hair growth oils work or not, that your hair will grow regardless of if you use hair growth oils. Yes, your hair will grow, but there are people who experience stunted hair growth, who experience alopecia, hair loss, and these hair growth oils just sort of stimulate your scalp to be able to grow the hair in those areas or grow them faster. So if this is something that you want to try, if you're battling any of that and you need an oil, a hair growth oil for your scalp, then I highly recommend the rosemary and cloves hair oil. And the good thing is, it's not even so difficult to make, as you're going to learn in this video. So let's get right to it. So these are the only ingredients that we're going to be using to make our clove and rosemary oil. Here I have some cloves. This is clove worth 500 naira. They are tied like this, and each goes for about 100 naira. We're going to be needing rosemary. I'm using the dried one because this is the one I have access to. So this is what the rosemary looks like. I've gotten some questions where people have asked where they can get these spices from. In Nigeria here, there are these Hausa guys that sell spices, cinnamon, ginger, and you'll typically get cloves and even rosemary most likely from them. So just go to the market and ask, and you'll find it there. For carrier oils, I'm going to be using olive oil. I've also had people ask if they can use Goya olive oil, and yes, this is the olive oil that I use for my clove and rosemary oil. You just have to make sure that you are getting the original, because there are lots of fakes in the market. And this is my cold pressed coconut oil. I'm going to be using this alongside the olive oil. That's it. So let's get right to it. To start, I'm going to measure out 3 tablespoons of my dried rosemary. To that, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of cloves. Now I'm going to go ahead and transfer this to my blender or grinder. I'm still going to keep grinding because I want to make sure that this is as smooth as can be. I'll tell you why in a moment. So we're finally done blending, and this is how well my blender was able to crush the spices. You can see that the cloves are completely crushed. There's still a few stems of rosemary here and there, but it's considerably crushed or is crushed to a considerable extent. I've also had people ask if it is compulsory to crush the spices. It is not compulsory, but it is necessary if you want to get the most out of your cloves and rosemary. So the more crushed they are, the looser the particles are, and that means that the more or the better your oils are able to infuse into the particles, getting out the nutrients or whatever it is that's in cloves and rosemary that makes it work well for your hair. So if you want to get the most out of it, by all means crush it. And if you do not have a blender, like I showed in my first video about how to make cloves and rosemary, you can absolutely use a mortar and a pestle, but please make sure that you're crushing them because you'll get better results. So back to our clove and rosemary oil. I'm going to measure out 1 cup of my olive oil. I'm just going to transfer this into the clove and rosemary powder. This oil is supposed to be melted already, but even though it isn't, it will melt on fire. So I'm just going to add that in now, and this is about half a cup of coconut oil. So now I'm just going to set a pot on fire and just allow the water to boil. Another tip would be to put enough water in the pot so that it doesn't dry up as it boils down, because this pot is going to be on fire, the oil is going to be on fire in the pot for 30 minutes. During that process, you don't want the water to dry up from the pot, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you don't put too much water so that it doesn't bubble up, boil up, and get into your oil. All right, so now our butter is boiling and there's a lot of steam. So the first thing I'm going to do will be to just turn it down, not like put it off, but just reduce it so that it can still boil, but the rate at which it boils will reduce so that it doesn't dry up quickly. So I'm just going to put this plate over it like so. So right now it is the steam from our water that is going to heat this up, and before long this coconut oil would have melted. I don't know if you guys can see it, but there's a lot of movement going on in the pot. If you look at the edges of the plate, you can see there's a lot of movement going on there, and it's not even because I touched it or anything. So that's just what happens when all that steam is getting to the plate, and you can see that our coconut oil is already beginning to melt. So like I mentioned, this is going to be on fire for a whole 30 minutes. But what you want to do is to make sure that you are stirring at intervals, just to make sure that everything is still combined as it infuses, because there's a tendency of the spices settling under the plate and leaving the oil off. You want to make sure that you keep stirring to destabilize everything so that they marry, you know. So it's been about 15 minutes, and this is what this is looking like. You can see that the oil is gradually beginning to change color, take on the color of the cloves and rosemary. And this is the reason that you have to be stirring constantly, because you can see that the spices settle under and they might just remain there and the oil on top. So you have to stir at intervals, maybe every 5 to 10 minutes, so that you destabilize them and they mix together and they continue to, marry until the cloves and rosemary infused into the oil. 20 minutes later, and I wanted you to notice how this thing looks. I don't know if you can see it. This is where all the nutrients is. So you want it to really mix with the oil. Make sure that you're really stirring. So here I am just making sure that there is still enough water in the pot because we still have a few more minutes to go. So you've noticed that by the time this has been on fire for about 30 minutes, the particles do not settle under as much as they did in the beginning. It's almost as if the spices have dissolved into the oil. Of course, not completely, but considerably. So at this point, I'm just going to turn the heat off and I'll just let it sit there to cool. Now that it's completely cooled, I'm just going to take the plate out of the pot. I'll stir this vigorously one last time and then I'll transfer this to my unlit oven where it's going to stay undisturbed for 3 days. It doesn't have to be in an oven. You can just keep this anywhere that's safe. It's now been 3 days since our oil was sitting undisturbed and it's finally time to strain this oil out. So I'm just stirring that once again and I'm going to be using this sieve, but you can absolutely use a cheesecloth for this. In fact, I would advise that you do. I just didn't want to stain my cheesecloth. That's why I'm using this, and also because this filter is kind of cute and I don't mind the small residue that will follow my oil and settle at the bottom of the bottle. So this is all the chaff that I got out of that, and I'm just going to transfer this into a bottle with a nozzle for easy application. So now that our oil is ready, I just want to show you how to apply it to your hair. While you can use this oil as a sealant for your moisture routine, how I use mine, however, is just to oil my scalp because my hair is high porosity and butters tend to do well or do better for my hair. This cap is going to be closed this entire time. I had applied it already and I thought I was recording, but I wasn't apparently. So I just make sure to apply the oil just in drops. Let me just show you guys because I love you. So I'll just run the nozzle through the lines of my scalp and I use my fingers to massage it in on my finger. The lines of my hair, you don't even need to press because see, it's just in drops, you don't need so much. So that is how I use mine. And I'm also trying to grow my edges, so you can see that this place is a little thinner than the rest of the hair, yet it used to be thinner than this. I've been using this oil for 5 to 6 months and I've noticed that my edges are beginning to grow. So maybe 1 year later I'll make a video and give you a full update. But yeah, apart from using this as a sealant after your water and leave-in conditioner, you also want to make sure that you're oiling your scalp, and this is how to do that. I forgot to close this video, so I just had to include this clip at the end just so I could say thank you for watching, and please subscribe to my channel if you made it this far without subscribing. It will mean a lot to me. Also, please give this video a thumbs up if you found it helpful, and don't forget to share with others you think it might be helpful too. Until another video, let's talk in the comments.